The rain came down in sheets that evening in New York City, blurring the bright lights of Times Square into a haze of neon streaks across the wet pavement. James Carter, a 45-year-old self-made millionaire, stepped briskly out of the elevator onto the ground floor of the Carter Global headquarters. His mind still running through numbers, contracts, and deadlines. He hated being late, and tonight he had an exclusive dinner planned with investors. His driver was already waiting outside with the sleek black Mercedes, engine humming, headlights cutting through the storm. But as the revolving glass doors spun open, James froze. Just beyond the polished steps of his skyscraper, under the merciless downpour, lay an elderly couple. The man, frail and grey-haired, was slumped against the curb, his thin shirt plastered to his body, chest rising weakly with each breath. Beside him, an elderly woman clung to his arm, trying to shield him with her body, though she herself was shivering violently. Her hair was soaked, raindrops streaming down her wrinkled face as she whispered words James couldn't hear. For a long second, James just stood there. His tailored suit shielded him from the cold. The umbrella in the driver's hand was already extended for him. He could have walked past, like the dozens of pedestrians hurrying by with their coats pulled tight, faces turned away. After all, this was New York. People collapsed in the streets all the time, didn't they? It wasn't his responsibility, but something in the scene pierced him deeply. The man's trembling hand, the woman's desperate attempt to keep him conscious, the sheer loneliness of two souls ignored by the world. James suddenly remembered his own parents, long gone now, who had once struggled through bitter winters when he was a boy. They hadn't always been poor, but there were nights they had gone without heat. Nights when his father wrapped him in an old blanket and whispered that things would get better. The memory hit him like a wave. Without another thought, James dropped his briefcase, rain splattering its leather surface, and rushed forward. His expensive shoes splashed in dirty water as he crouched beside them. "Sir, ma'am, can you hear me?" he shouted over the storm. The woman looked up, her lips trembling, and managed to nod. The man's eyes fluttered open weakly, his breathing shallow. James turned toward his driver, urgency snapping in his voice. "Don't just stand there. Help me get them inside, now." Together they lifted the frail bodies, James's suit becoming soaked as the man's weight sagged against him. The woman clutched James' arm tightly, as if afraid he might disappear. They stumbled through the glass doors into the marble lobby, where warmth and golden light replaced the bitter cold. Inside, staff and security stared in shock. Never had they seen their boss, the famously cold businessman, carry strangers into his building. But James didn't care about the looks. For the first time in years, his focus wasn't on money, power, or reputation. It was on two human beings who desperately needed help. And in that moment, James Carter felt something stir inside him, something he had almost forgotten he had: compassion. The lobby of Carter Global headquarters had never felt so alive. The sound of rain still echoed faintly against the glass walls, but inside, warmth radiated from the marble floors and golden lights. Two receptionists hurried over with blankets, while a security guard rushed to bring hot tea from the break room. James Carter, still dripping from the storm, ignored the dampness of his clothes and knelt beside the elderly couple as they settled onto the leather couch. The man's breathing was shallow, but steadier now. His wife clutched the steaming cup with trembling hands, her eyes full of both gratitude and shame. "We didn't want to cause trouble," she whispered, her voice thin as paper. "We just needed somewhere to rest for a while." James leaned closer, his voice gentler than his employees had ever heard. "You're not causing trouble. You're safe here." For the first time that night, the elderly man stirred, opening his eyes. His voice was hoarse. "We lost our home last month. The landlord raised the rent and we couldn't keep up. We've been moving from place to place ever since. Tonight, the shelter was full." He coughed, wincing with the effort. The words sank into James like stones dropped into still water. He sat back, staring at the couple with a mix of disbelief and guilt. Just a block away, his luxury penthouse suite stood empty, filled with fine art and furniture he hardly used. He thought about the millions he had spent on things that meant little, while people like this couple had nothing. His employees shifted uncomfortably nearby, unused to seeing their boss so visibly shaken. James straightened slowly, but instead of the cold detachment they expected, his expression was heavy with resolve. "Call an ambulance," he ordered one of the guards, "and find them dry clothes. Now." His tone left no room for hesitation, but this time it wasn't barked with arrogance. It carried urgency and care. As the staff scrambled, the elderly woman touched James's sleeve. Why are you helping us?" she asked softly, her eyes glistening with tears. James met her gaze and for once didn't have a polished answer. "Because someone should have," he said simply. The ambulance arrived minutes later, its flashing lights reflected in the glass walls of the skyscraper. Paramedics rushed in, lifting the frail man onto a stretcher and gently helping his wife beside him. Before they left, James pressed his business card into the woman's hand. "Don't worry about where you'll go after the hospital," he told her firmly. "I'll make sure you're taken care of." Her eyes widened, tears streaming down her cheeks as she tried to thank him. But James shook his head, cutting her off. "Save your strength. Just know you're not alone anymore." As the stretcher disappeared into the rainy night, James stood silently at the entrance of his building. His suit was ruined, his schedule in tatters, but none of that mattered. For the first time in years, he felt human. That night, James Carter made a promise. To himself and to the city he had once ignored. He would build shelters, fund programs, and use his fortune not just for deals and profits, but for people. And as he watched the ambulance lights fade into the storm, James knew one thing with absolute certainty. True wealth was not measured in millions, but in the lives you touched.